We usually think of modern management as being driven by the latest behavioral science or, I don't know, whatever the newest Silicon Valley trend is. But what if I told you the absolute best tool for building rock-solid trust and empathy on a team was actually written thousands of years ago? Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're looking at something that is just incredibly fascinating, a truly ancient text that basically holds the ultimate blueprint for fixing toxic team dynamics.
I mean, it sounds totally surprising, right? What in the world could a 5,000-year-old conversation set literally on a battlefield possibly teach us about modern workplace trust? Well, it turns out the Bhagavad Gita, and specifically Chapter 5, perfectly diagnoses our very modern crisis of workplace burnout, fragile trust, and clashing egos. The whole text is set on the eve of this massive war. The warrior Arjuna is just paralyzed. He's having this profound moral crisis, dealing with intense anxiety. So his charioteer and guide, Lord Krishna, steps in to offer him some wisdom. And as we're going to see, the advice Krishna gives for surviving a literal battlefield maps flawlessly onto how we navigate high-stress, high-stakes environments today.
So here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start by bridging these ancient ideas with our modern workplaces. Then look at the foundation of what I'm calling radical empathy. After that, we'll dive into this beautiful metaphor of the lotus leaf, see exactly how personal detachment actually builds team trust, and finally, figure out how to resolve conflict completely without ego.
All right, let's jump straight into that first part. It's time to see how this ancient battlefield crisis directly mirrors our own modern organizational struggles. We kind of have this tendency to think of corporate environments as, perfectly rational and data-driven. But if we're being honest, beneath the surface, they're entirely driven by human psychology. The fear of failure, the desperate desire for recognition, the non-stop stress to perform. Well, top companies are actually waking up to this. Take Maruti Suzuki, for example, India's absolute largest automaker. They're actively using these exact Gita principles to train their corporate leaders. And they aren't just doing it for spiritual reasons. They're doing it because this stuff works. It drastically improves efficiency and emotional management. They're literally pulling universal principles from the Gita and applying them directly to the boardroom to manage stress and build ethical leadership. That's a real game changer.
So, that brings us to the big question. How do we actually start fixing these workplace clashes using this philosophy? Let's talk about the foundation of radical empathy. The absolute bedrock of this whole approach is found right in verse 5:18 of the Gita. It introduces this concept called Sama Darshan. Basically, that translates to equal vision. It's the spiritual practice of seeing the exact same divine essence in all beings, totally regardless of their external status, or their species, or whatever social role they're playing. Think about that in a workplace context. It's the ability to look right past job titles and recognize the exact same shared human essence in a CEO, a summer intern, or yes, even that wildly difficult client. Now, pulling this off requires a pretty massive shift in perspective. See, our default setting is what we'd call ego-driven vision. That's when we judge our teammates by their rank on the org chart, their output, or their status. And what does that do? It creates silos, it breeds resentment, and it completely wrecks psychological safety. But if you make the shift to equal vision, it's like magic. You naturally dismantle those toxic office hierarchies. You literally stop seeing people as just resources to use or obstacles in your way, and you start seeing them as equals who deserve profound mutual respect. To really bring this concept to life, there's this famous, incredible story about the Saint Eknath Maharaj. He demonstrated this equal vision in the most radical way possible. One day, he prepares this incredibly sacred, delicious meal of flatbread, roti, and clarified butter, or ghee, as an offering for his deity. But right before he can offer it, this hungry stray dog just runs up, snatches the dry roti, and absolutely bolts. Now most people, they'd be furious, but Eknath didn't get angry at all. Instead, he actually grabs the bowl of ghee and starts chasing after the dog. Crazy, right? But he did it because he genuinely saw the divine presence in that stray animal. He completely erased the boundaries between man, animal, sacred, and profane. And as he's running after this dog, he yells out this amazing quote. "Wait, you forgot the ghee. You must apply B before eating. My Vital, don't eat dry food." I mean, just take a second to imagine applying that level of radical, unconditional empathy when you're dealing with your most difficult or stubborn colleagues. What if, instead of getting angry when they mess up, you chased after them with the metaphorical ghee to help them succeed? That, right there, is true living Sama Darshan. Okay, so once we actually have that empathy down, we hit another hurdle.
How do we protect our own peace of mind while working in these high-pressure environments? Let's explore this beautiful idea.
The Gita gives us this just absolutely stunning visual metaphor for this exact problem. In verse 5:10, it tells us that we have to learn to act fully and passionately in our roles, but, and this is the key, while remaining completely untouched by the anxieties of the results. Think of a lotus leaf. It grows right smack in the middle of muddy water. But if you pour water on it, the droplets just bead right up and roll off. The leaf stays perfectly dry and pristine. We need to be exactly like that lotus leaf at work, completely immersed in the action, doing our best, but totally repelling the toxic stress of the outcome.
And what's so cool is how modern psychology and even thermodynamics back this up. Researchers literally link this to the concept of entropy, which is just a fancy way of measuring disorder or chaos in a system. When you're a stress-detached worker, your focus is obsessed with the reward. That leads to what we'd call high mental entropy, just total anxiety and inner chaos. But when you become a detached karma yogi and actually let go of the outcome, your mental entropy drops. You hit this state of inner harmony. Letting go of the result doesn't make you care less. It actually shifts you from being an ego-crushed, volatile worker to a super stable, resilient, and objective teammate.
So let's take that to the next logical step. Let's see how this personal detachment actually transforms the entire team dynamic.
Because you see, detachment doesn't just help you individually, it literally acts as a superpower for the whole group. Modern management research shows over and over again that team trust is usually broken by one thing: ego. Who's getting the credit? Who's taking the blame? But when you renounce the ego's obsession with taking the credit, you completely cure your own performance anxiety. And basically overnight, you become this highly trusted, emotionally safe teammate. People just naturally gravitate toward colleagues who aren't constantly trying to step on everyone else to get ahead.
And here's exactly how that detachment works its magic on teams. First, it decenters external rewards, so you aren't just working for the bonus anymore, you're working for the actual purpose. Second, as we mentioned, it cures performance anxiety. Third, it cultivates what modern psychology calls flow states, that deep, intrinsic engagement. And finally, it fosters this unwavering emotional stability. The crucial takeaway here is that by dropping our ego attachment to the results, we aren't losing our drive. No way. We're actually unlocking a deeply intrinsic motivation that puts the team's shared purpose way above personal glory. And honestly, that's the exact definition of a great collaborator. Now, I hear you asking, what happens when disagreements inevitably arise? Because they always do, right?
No matter how empathetic or perfectly detached we manage to be, friction is going to happen. But the Gita offers a brilliantly clear 3-step path to resolving disputes. Step 1, step back from your ego. If someone critiques your idea, your ego immediately wants to fight back. You have to detach from that knee-jerk emotional reaction. Step 2, seek the root cause. Look, a workplace fight over a spreadsheet is almost never actually about the spreadsheet. It's usually about someone feeling unheard or undervalued. And step 3, practice nonviolence and genuine compassion. Address the human being first and the task second.
All of this, the equal vision, the lotus leaf detachment, the egoless conflict resolution, it all culminates in one massive concept: nishkama karma. That roughly translates to selfless action. In our modern offices, this simply means doing the hard work selflessly, for the greater good of your peers and the organization's mission, rather than just constantly angling for your next promotion. It's essentially the ancient blueprint for becoming a true servant leader, completely regardless of your actual job title.
As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to really challenge how you approach your very next team reading. Look inward and ask yourself honestly, are you acting for the team, or are you just working for the applause? If you can learn to work like that lotus leaf, fully engaged, totally passionate, but completely untouched by the need for ego-driven rewards, you aren't just going to find your own inner peace. You're going to become the most trusted, empathetic, and impactful member of your entire team. Thank you so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep reflecting, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.